The bridge of the Meridian's edge hummed with nervous energy as Captain Zephyra Kane studied the tactical display that would have made lesser commanders weep. 7 distinct fleet formations hung in the void like predatory constellations, each representing a civilization that had ruled the stars long before humanity had even discovered fire. The Veltar hegemony's crystalline dreadnoughts caught starlight on their faceted hulls, while the bioships of the Zroth collective pulsed with bioluminescent veins that resembled beating hearts. The mechanical precision of the Corvin Assembly's fleet contrasted sharply with the flowing, organic curves of the ethereal Dominion's vessels, and the shadow-wreathed ships of the Umbral Syndicate seemed to absorb light itself. Captain Thane Volkov's gravelly voice carried the weight of their situation as he looked up from his tactical console. The scarred veteran had seen more battles than most, but even his weathered features showed strain. The Nexari Confederacy and Plasma Lords have just completed their final positioning. All 7 fleets are now in attack formation around the Kepler system. Zephyra's fingers drummed against the arm of her command chair, a habit that had developed during her years fighting impossible odds across the Outer Rim. At 35, she had earned her reputation as humanity's most unpredictable tactician, but this situation transcended anything in the military archives. The 7 civilizations had never allied before, their ancient rivalries and territorial disputes had kept them fractured for millennia. Yet here they stood united, brought together by a single common enemy, humanity's rapid expansion into what they considered their sovereign territories. "Ma'am," Lyra Ostwin's melodious voice carried across the bridge from the communications station. The young officer's usually bright demeanor had dimmed as she monitored the alien chatter. "I'm detecting synchronized countdown sequences across all 7 fleets. They're coordinating their attack patterns with mathematical precision." The irony wasn't lost on Zephyra. Humanity had spent decades trying to establish diplomatic relations with these ancient powers, only to succeed in uniting them against their common threat. The Meridian's edge and her small battle group of 12 ships represented the entirety of human military presence in this sector, a laughably inadequate force against 7,000 alien vessels equipped with technology that made human weapons seem like crude clubs. Kai Soren's voice crackled through the intercom from the engineering deck, his Scandinavian accent thick with concentration. "Captain, I've pushed our quantum drives to 112% efficiency. We're running hot, but she'll hold together for whatever you've got planned." Whatever she had planned. Zephyra almost smiled at the engineer's confidence. The truth was, conventional tactics had died the moment those 7 fleets had emerged from hyperspace. No amount of human courage or technological innovation could overcome such overwhelming odds through direct confrontation. But Zephyra had built her career on understanding that the greatest weakness of any alliance was the alliance itself. "Naya," she called to her pilot, whose dark eyes reflected the star field beyond the viewports. "How long until they're in optimal firing range?" Naya Blackthorn's hands danced across her control interfaces with the fluid grace that had made her legendary among fighter pilots before her promotion to helm officer. 18 minutes, Captain. The Veltar are leading the charge, their crystal matrices give them the longest effective range. Zephyra stood and walked to the main view screen, her reflection ghost-like against the backdrop of approaching doom. Behind her, the bridge crew worked with the quiet efficiency that came from absolute trust in their commander. They had followed her through the Sigma Draconis campaign, where she had turned a Corvin supply convoy into a weapon against their own battleships. They had stood with her during the Proxima incident, when she had convinced an ethereal warchoir to destroy their own flagship by exploiting their cultural taboos. But this was different. This was 7 civilizations that had learned from humanity's previous victories, 7 fleets that had studied every human battle tactic and prepared countermeasures. This was extinction staring humanity in the face with 7 different sets of alien eyes. "Captain," Thane's voice carried a note of grim admiration. "I've completed the tactical analysis. Even if we had 100 battle groups, our victory probability would be less than 2%. Zephyra turned back to her crew, seeing her own determination reflected in their faces. These weren't just soldiers, they were the inheritors of a species that had clawed its way from cave-dwelling hunters to starfaring explorers through sheer stubborn will. They were descendants of people who had looked at impossible odds and decided to stack them higher just to make the victory more satisfying. "Then we'd better make sure we're not fighting them as one united enemy," she said, settling back into her command chair. "Lyra, I need you to monitor all interfleet communications. Focus on command frequencies and any personal channels between fleet commanders. Thane, I want detailed psychological profiles on every fleet admiral we've encountered before. Kai, prepare the quantum resonance array for some very specific harmonic frequencies." The crew moved with renewed purpose, despite not understanding their captain's plan. That was the mark of true leadership, inspiring faith even in the face of annihilation. As the alien fleets drew closer, their combined firepower enough to crack planets, Zephyra began to smile. 7 civilizations thought they understood humanity's greatest strength was their adaptability or their technology or their courage. They were all wrong. Humanity's greatest strength was their understanding that every alliance contained the seeds of its own destruction. The first warning shots from the Veltar hegemony lit up the void like dying stars, their crystalline energy weapons carving through space with surgical precision. The shots deliberately missed the meridian's edge by kilometers, a traditional display of overwhelming force meant to encourage surrender. On the bridge, Zephyra watched as the energy signatures played across her tactical display, each blast representing firepower that could level a city. "Captain, incoming transmission on all frequencies," Lyra announced, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "It's being broadcast simultaneously by all 7 fleet commanders." The main view screen flickered to life, splitting into 7 distinct sections. Each quadrant showed the face of an alien commander, representing civilizations that had shaped galactic politics for thousands of years. High Admiral Zekthara of the Veltar hegemony dominated the center panel, her crystalline features refracting light into prismatic patterns. To her right, the biomechanical hybrid face of Swarm Leader Gorth displayed the grotesque fusion of flesh and technology that defined the Zroth Collective's leadership caste. Human vessel, Zekthara's voice carried the harmonic resonance that marked her species as natural-born singers, though there was no beauty in her words now. "You stand before the combined might of 7 sovereign civilizations. Your species has overextended itself into territories claimed by ancient right. This ends now." Marshal Krex of the Corvin Assembly spoke next, his mechanical voice processing through artificial vocal cords with perfect emotional suppression. "We offer terms of conditional surrender. Your crew will be preserved for cultural study. Your vessel's technology will be analyzed and catalogued. Resistance will result in immediate vaporization." Zephyra stood slowly, straightening her uniform as she faced the screen. Around her, the bridge crew maintained their stations with the discipline that had carried them through a dozen impossible situations. She could feel their trust like a physical weight, pushing her to find the solution that conventional military thinking insisted didn't exist. "Honored commanders," she began, her voice carrying the practiced diplomacy that had kept humanity alive in a galaxy full of older, more powerful species. "I'm Captain Zephyra Kane of the Earth Defense Force. Before we discuss terms, I feel obligated to point out a rather significant tactical oversight in your formation." The alien faces on the screen displayed varying degrees of confusion and irritation. Warseer Vashti of the Umbral Syndicate leaned forward, her shadow-wreathed features barely visible even through the transmission. "You speak of our tactics as if you possessed the military wisdom to comprehend them, human." "Perhaps I'm wrong," Zephyra conceded with a slight shrug. "But I couldn't help noticing that the Plasma Lords have positioned their solar core vessels directly in line with the Ethereal Dominion's Harmony ships. Given the known incompatibility between plasma-based weapons and ethereal resonance fields, I wondered if that was intentional." The screen erupted in a cacophony of alien voices as Fleet Crown Xiphon of the Plasma Lords and Song Admiral Iralii of the Ethereal Dominion simultaneously began protesting their formations. Thane caught Zephyra's eye and raised an eyebrow. The formations were actually perfectly compatible, but the captain had just planted a seed of doubt between natural rivals. Prime Voice Sekatar of the Nexari Confederacy's mechanical translation matrix crackled as he spoke. Human deception tactics are irrelevant. Our alliance transcends historical conflicts. Your destruction remains certain. Of course, Zephyra nodded agreeably. I was simply curious about the command structure. 7 equal commanders, 7 different tactical philosophies, 7 different technologies that must somehow coordinate perfectly in battle. It's quite ambitious. Behind her, Lyra was monitoring the interfleet communications with growing excitement. The human captain's casual observations were triggering exactly the kind of paranoid cross-chatter that had prevented these civilizations from maintaining alliances for more than a few months throughout their entire histories. I particularly admire how the Veltar have taken point position, Zephyra continued conversationally. Naturally, as the most heavily armed civilization, they'd bear the brunt of any return fire. Very noble of the other 6 fleets to allow such tactical generosity. Zekthara's crystalline features shifted through several color spectrums, a sure sign of agitation among her species. The formation was agreed upon by unanimous consensus. Each fleet contributes according to their capabilities. Absolutely, Zephyra agreed. Though I notice the Zroth bioships are hanging back in a perfect position to consume the wreckage after the battle. Again, very wise tactical thinking from whoever designed this formation. Swarm leader Gortha's mechanical implants began clicking rapidly, a stress response that sent ripples of concern through the bioship network. His hybrid voice carried notes of defensive anger. The collective serves the Alliance faithfully. We do not scavenge from our allies. 30 seconds until optimal firing range, Naya reported quietly, her voice barely audible above the growing argument between the alien commanders. Zephyra nodded almost imperceptibly, then addressed the screen again. Forgive my curiosity, but who exactly is commanding this joint operation? 7 civilizations, 7 different military doctrines, 7 different definitions of victory, it must be challenging to coordinate. Particularly when some species prefer quick decisive strikes while others favor prolonged siege warfare. The transmission dissolved into multilingual chaos as each commander began asserting their own strategic priorities. The Corvin Assembly's preference for systematic elimination clashed with the Umbral Syndicate's Shadowstrike philosophy, while the Ethereal Dominion's harmony-based battle songs interfered with the Nexari Confederacy's quantum-linked communications. Captain, Thane whispered urgently, I'm detecting micro-adjustments in their formations. They're starting to second-guess their positioning. Lyra, what's the chatter telling us? Command frequency is degenerating into arguments about targeting priorities and engagement ranges. The Plasma Lords want to open fire immediately, but the Ethereal Dominion is insisting on a harmony song preparation period. The Veltar are demanding that someone take responsibility for overall tactical command, and nobody wants to subordinate their fleet to an alien admiral. Zephyra smiled with the satisfaction of a chess master who had just forced her opponents to contemplate their first real mistake. 7 civilizations had united against humanity, but they had forgotten the fundamental rule of coalition warfare: unity of command wasn't just important, it was absolutely essential. And she had just reminded them that they had none. Well, she said pleasantly to the arguing aliens, I can see you have some tactical details to sort out. We'll wait. 20 minutes had passed since the alien fleets should have opened fire, and the arguing on the communication channels had escalated from mere tactical disagreements to accusations of sabotage and conspiracy. Zephyra watched the probability matrices shift on her tactical display as micro-adjustments in the enemy formations created exploitable gaps in their previously impenetrable wall of firepower. Captain, Lyra's voice carried barely contained excitement as she monitored the increasingly fractious communications between the 7 fleets. The Umbral Syndicate just accused the Corvin Assembly of deliberately transmitting tactical data to throw off their targeting solutions. Marshal Krex is demanding an immediate review of all communication protocols. Thane's scarred features showed the first hint of optimism he displayed since the battle began. The Veltar crystal ships are rotating to maintain optimal angle on our position, but they're drifting out of formation with the Nexari quantum link vessels. Gap analysis shows a potential breakthrough corridor if we could exploit the timing. Not yet, Zephyra cautioned, though her pulse quickened at the possibilities emerging from the chaos she'd helped orchestrate. We need them more fractured before we make any aggressive moves. Kai, how are our quantum resonance arrays? The engineer's voice carried through the intercom with characteristic precision. Arrays are calibrated and ready, Captain. I've programmed harmonic frequencies for all 7 species communication systems. One pulse and their cross-fleet coordination goes dark for approximately 4 minutes while they recalibrate. Hold that in reserve, Zephyra instructed, then turned her attention back to the view screen where the 7 alien commanders were engaged in what could only be described as an intergalactic argument about military hierarchy. Naya, bring us about. Heading 7 Mark II, Quarter Impulse. The Meridian's edge began a slow, almost casual turn that would present their dorsal shields to the combined alien fleet. It was a maneuver that in normal circumstances would be considered suicidal, exposing their weakest defensive arc to 7,000 enemy vessels. But Zephyra was counting on the fact that none of the alien commanders could afford to fire without consensus, and consensus was rapidly becoming impossible. Human vessel, Warseer Vashti's shadow-wreathed face dominated the communication screen as the Umbral Syndicate commander took temporary precedence. Your tactical maneuvering serves no purpose. Surrender now and preserve what remains of your crew's lives. I was actually hoping to speak with whoever's in command, Zephyra replied with practiced innocence. But I'm starting to suspect that position doesn't exist. 7 equal commanders, 7 different opinions about how to proceed. It's quite a pickle you've created for yourselves. Song Admiral Lyralii of the Ethereal Dominion's harmonious voice carried notes of frustration that interfered with the translation matrix. The human seeks to divide our unity through crude psychological manipulation. Such tactics are beneath civilized warfare. Is it psychological manipulation to point out that the Plasma Lords have been charging their solar core weapons for 30 minutes? Zephyra asked reasonably. Those systems have a maximum charge duration of 45 minutes before mandatory cooling cycles. Someone should probably tell Fleet Crown Xiphon that he's running out of time to make his tactical contribution meaningful. The response was immediate and devastating to the alien coalition's fragile cooperation. Fleet Crown Xiphon's plasma-wreathed features flared with thermonuclear intensity as he realized the human had revealed classified technical specifications about his weapons systems. His accusations that someone in the Alliance had leaked intelligence to the humans sparked a fresh wave of paranoia and finger-pointing. Captain, Thane reported with growing amazement, 3 different fleets are now running security sweeps on their own communication systems. The Zroth bioships are physically disconnecting from the interfleet data network. And our own security situation? Zephyra asked. Ironically, we're safer now than we were an hour ago. Their targeting solutions are degrading as they lose coordination. If they fired now, there's a 30% chance they'd hit each other instead of us. Lyra looked up from her communications console with barely suppressed excitement. Captain, you need to hear this. I'm detecting private channel communications between individual fleet commanders. They're starting to negotiate separate ceasefire agreements with each other. Zephyra felt the familiar rush of a plan coming together against impossible odds. The 7-fleet alliance that had seemed unbreakable an hour ago was revealing itself to be exactly what she'd suspected, a hastily assembled coalition held together by mutual fear of humanity rather than any genuine trust or shared strategic vision. And like all such alliances, it was only as strong as its weakest moment of unity. Open a channel to all 7 fleets, she instructed Lyra. Let's see if we can help them resolve their command structure issues. The view screen flickered back to life, showing all 7 alien commanders in various states of agitation. Some were clearly arguing with off-screen advisors, while others monitored their own security systems with obvious paranoia. Honored commanders, Zephyra began with the tone of someone offering helpful advice to friends. I've been thinking about your coordination challenges, and I believe I have a solution. Why don't you select one fleet to take overall command? Someone with extensive experience in multi-species tactical coordination. The suggestion landed like a photon torpedo in the middle of the alien conference. Each commander immediately began asserting their own superior qualifications for supreme command, while simultaneously questioning the military competence and hidden agendas of their supposed allies. High Admiral Zekthara's crystalline features cycled through a rapid spectrum of colors as she spoke. The Veltar hegemony has commanded starfleets since before most of these civilizations achieved spaceflight. Our tactical superiority is established by millennia of conquest. The Corvin Assembly's computational battle matrices exceed organic tactical thinking by several orders of magnitude, Marshal Krex responded with mechanical precision. Emotional decision-making has no place in modern warfare. Statistical analysis cannot account for the ethereal harmonics that govern true battlefield flow, Song Admiral Iralii interjected, her voice carrying harmonics that made the translation system struggle. Only those who understand the deeper currents of cosmic resonance can guide a fleet to true victory. Zefra settled back in her command chair and watched 7 ancient civilizations tear their alliance apart through simple pride and mutual suspicion. Behind her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, preparing for the moment when this war of words would transform into something far more dangerous. 15 minutes until the Plasma Lords hit mandatory cooling cycle, Naya reported quietly. And the gaps in their formation? Zefra asked. Widening with every minute they spend arguing, Thane confirmed. If this keeps up, we might actually have a chance. The breakthrough came when Prime Voice Sek Tar of the Nexari Confederacy made a fatal tactical error. In his growing frustration with the Coalition's inability to coordinate, he transmitted deployment orders directly to his own fleet while the other 6 commanders were still arguing about target priorities. The Quantum Link vessels began moving into attack formation independent of the Alliance structure, and Zefra saw her opening. Captain, Lyra announced with barely controlled excitement, the Nexari are breaking formation. They're moving to attack position without coordination with the other fleets. And how are the others reacting to this unauthorized advance? Zefra inquired, though she could already see the answer developing on her tactical display. Mass confusion across all remaining fleets. The Veltar are demanding the Nexari return to formation. The Corvin Assembly is calculating probability matrices for friendly fire incidents. The Umbral Syndicate is going full stealth mode. I think they suspect this is some kind of trap. Thane's gruff voice carried a note of grudging admiration for his captain's psychological warfare. The Coalition is fracturing in real time. 4 fleets are holding position, 2 are repositioning to avoid potential crossfire, and the Nexari are advancing alone. Zefra stood and walked to the main view screen, where Prime Voice Sek Tar's mechanical features dominated the display. His translation matrix crackled with electronic frustration as he addressed the other commanders. The Nexari Confederacy will not be paralyzed by endless debate. Our quantum link technology allows precision targeting that eliminates friendly fire risks. We will destroy the human vessel and end this embarrassment. An excellent demonstration of independent initiative, Zefra commented loud enough for all 7 commanders to hear. Though I noticed the Nexari advancement puts them directly between the Veltar crystal ships and our position. High Admiral Zekthara, won't your energy weapons recharge those quantum link nodes if they intersect your firing solutions? The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the alien alliance. Zekthara's crystalline features flared through an entire spectrum of warning colors as she realized the human was correct. Veltar energy weapons were incompatible with Nexari quantum technology in exactly the way Zefra had described. Any attempt to fire through the Nexari formation would result in a cascade failure that could destroy both fleets. Confederacy vessels will clear the firing lane immediately, Zekthara commanded with harmonic authority that made the bridge speakers resonate. Your unauthorized advance jeopardizes the entire operation. The Nexari Confederacy takes orders from no crystalline autocrat, Sek Tar responded, his mechanical voice processing at maximum volume. Our targeting solutions are precise. Your concerns about friendly fire reveal tactical incompetence. Behind the arguing commanders, Zephyra could see the other 5 fleets beginning to make their own independent decisions. The Zroth bioships were extending feeding tendrils toward the growing debris field from several exploded asteroids, clearly preparing for post-battle consumption regardless of who won. The Corvin assembly vessels had locked into defensive formations that prioritized their own survival over coalition objectives. The ethereal Dominion Harmony ships were beginning to sing, their battle songs creating interference patterns that disrupted everyone else's communications. Kai, Zephyra called toward the engineering station, "Are those harmonic frequencies ready?" "Standing by, Captain." "One pulse will scramble their communications for exactly 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Hold for my signal." "Naya, plot us a course through that growing gap between the Nexari and Veltar formations. Maximum burn when I give the word." The pilot's hands danced across her controls, calculating vectors through a space that would soon be filled with enough firepower to crack moons. "Course plotted, Captain. We'll have a 30-second window when their targeting solutions overlap and cancel each other out. Thane, prepare all torpedo tubes but do not lock targets. I want this to look like a desperate escape attempt, not a calculated attack." "Tubes loaded and ready, Captain. Our chances of survival are still about to improve dramatically," Zephyra finished with a smile that would have made her academy instructors proud. They had trained her to think in terms of conventional tactics and overwhelming firepower, but they had never taught her the fine art of turning an enemy's strength into their greatest weakness. On the view screen, the argument between the 7 commanders had devolved into accusations of betrayal and incompetence. Warseer Vashti was questioning whether the alliance had been compromised from the beginning, while Fleet Crown Xiphon was demanding immediate action before his plasma cores reached critical overcharge. Song Admiral Ireliai's harmony songs were creating interference patterns that made translation increasingly difficult, and Swarm Leader Gortha's bioships were beginning to display the feeding behaviors that preceded their species' combat frenzy. "Captain," Lyra reported with growing amazement, "I'm detecting weapons lock from multiple fleets, but they're not all targeting us. The Umbral Syndicate has shadow-locked the Corvin assembly, apparently suspecting them of mechanical treachery. The Plasma Lords are tracking the bioships because their feeding behavior is triggering thermal aggressive response protocols. And the Nexari? Still advancing on our position, but their quantum link targeting is being disrupted by the Ethereal Dominion's battle songs. Their firing solutions are degrading with every passing second." Zephyra felt the familiar calm that descended during the moment before impossible odds became merely improbable ones. 7 civilizations had gathered to destroy humanity, but they had forgotten that their ancient rivalries and technological incompatibilities were exactly the weaknesses a clever tactician could exploit. They had focused so intently on their common enemy that they had failed to prepare for their uncommon alliance. "All stations, prepare for Tactical Maneuver 77 Alpha," she announced, using the designation for her most desperate gambit. "In 30 seconds, we're going to show 7 alien civilizations what happens when humans stop running and start thinking." The bridge crew responded with the practiced efficiency that came from absolute trust in their captain's ability to find victory in the jaws of defeat. They had followed her through situations that should have been their graves, and they were ready to follow her through this one. 20 seconds until optimal window, Naya announced. "Harmonic pulse ready," Kai confirmed. "All ships tracking our escape vector," Thane reported. Now, Zephyra commanded with the quiet authority that had carried her through a dozen impossible battles. "Execute." The harmonic pulse from the Meridian's edge struck the 7 alien fleets like a perfectly timed electromagnetic symphony, scrambling their interfleet communications at the exact moment when coordination was most critical. In the sudden silence between civilizations, Zephyra's carefully orchestrated chaos bloomed into full tactical catastrophe for the Alliance. "Pulse successful," Kai reported from engineering. "All 7 fleets are operating on isolated communication systems. For minutes until they can re-establish quantum link protocols." The Meridian's edge dove through the gap between the Nexari and Veltar formations, her engines burning at maximum efficiency as she threaded the needle between two civilizations whose weapons were now live and tracking targets in the communication blackout. Naya's piloting was nothing short of artistic as she curved their trajectory through three-dimensional space that was rapidly filling with confused alien warships. "Captain," Thane announced with professional calm that barely concealed his amazement, "the Nexari have opened fire on what they believe is our position. Their targeting solution was locked on our previous vector." "And where are those quantum torpedoes actually heading?" Zephyra asked, though she could already see the answer developing on her tactical display. "Direct intercept course with the Veltar formation. Impact in 15 seconds. The first explosion lit the void like a newborn star as Nexari quantum torpedoes struck Veltar crystalline shields. The harmonic resonance between quantum technology and crystal matrices created a feedback cascade that shattered 3 Veltar vessels and sent prismatic fragments spinning through space. In the communication blackout, neither fleet could explain the apparent betrayal to the other. "Return fire from the Veltar," Thane reported with grim satisfaction. "Crystal matrix energy beams targeting the Nexari formation. The Confederacy ships are interpreting this as a planned assault." Zephyra watched as 60 years of delicate peace between the Nexari Confederacy and Veltar hegemony evaporated in a storm of mutual destruction. Without communication to clarify the situation, each fleet could only assume the other had chosen this moment to settle old territorial disputes. The alliance was devouring itself from within. "Lyra, what's the status on the other 5 fleets?" "Panic and confusion across all remaining formations, Captain. The Zroth bioships are responding to the violence by entering combat frenzy, they're attacking anything that moves. The Corvin Assembly is implementing defensive protocols that have them targeting the bioships as contamination threats. The Umbral Syndicate has gone full stealth and appears to be maneuvering for surprise attacks on multiple targets. And our friends the Plasma Lords? Fleet Crown Xiphon is 30 seconds from mandatory cooling cycle. His thermal cores are redlining, and without communication to coordinate with other fleets, he's making the command decision to discharge all weapons immediately." Zephyra smiled with the satisfaction of a plan unfolding exactly as designed. "Naya, bring us about. I want a clear view of this educational display in applied coalition warfare." The Meridian's edge curved through space to a position of relative safety, watching as the greatest military alliance in galactic history transformed into the most spectacular friendly fire incident ever recorded. The Plasma Lord's solar core weapons discharged in a brilliant cascade of thermonuclear fury, but without coordination, their targeting solution struck 3 different fleets simultaneously. "Multiple impacts," Thane reported with professional detachment that couldn't hide his awe. "Plasma bombardment has struck Corvin Assembly vessels, triggering their defensive protocol matrix. They're now returning fire on the Plasma Lords while maintaining engagement with the Zroth bioships. The Ethereal Dominion is attempting to restore harmony through battle song," Lyra added, "but their harmonic frequencies are interfering with everyone else's targeting systems. The remaining fleets are treating their songs as sonic weapons." "And the Umbral Syndicate?" "Unknown, Captain. They've achieved perfect stealth mode. But sensor ghosts suggest they're positioning for shadow strikes on multiple targets. Classic Umbral tactics. Wait for maximum chaos, then eliminate everyone who might remember they were here." Zephyra stood and walked to the main view screen, where the spectacle of 7 civilizations destroying each other played out in brilliant, tragic detail. Each fleet was now fighting at least 2 others, convinced that the alliance had been a trap from the beginning. Without communication to coordinate or clarify, mutual paranoia and ancient grudges were taking their inevitable toll. "Captain," Kai's voice carried through the intercom with barely contained excitement, "their power signatures are dropping across all fleets. They're taking substantial casualties from friendly fire. If this continues for another 10 minutes, they'll be too damaged to threaten anyone." "It won't continue for 10 minutes, Zephyra replied, watching as the tactical display showed the gradual restoration of limited communications between some fleets. "They're not stupid, just paranoid. Eventually they'll realize what happened and try to restore their alliance." So what's our next move? Thane asked. Zephyra turned back to her command crew, seeing her own determination reflected in their faces. They had followed her through the impossible and emerged into the merely improbable. But the battle wasn't over, it had simply transformed from a question of human survival into an opportunity for something far more ambitious. Now we make sure they can never unite against humanity again, she said with quiet authority. Lyra, open communication channels to all 7 fleets simultaneously. It's time for the final act of this drama. Captain, Thane said quietly, they still outnumber us thousands to 1, even damaged. Numbers only matter when you're fighting the same enemy, Zephyra replied. And after today, these 7 civilizations are going to be far too busy fighting each other to worry about humanity's expansion into their territories. All channels open, Captain, Lyra announced. Zephyra straightened her uniform and faced the view screen with the confidence of someone who had just rewritten the strategic balance of the galaxy through pure psychological warfare. Time to explain to 7 ancient civilizations why their alliance was doomed from the moment they forgot that their greatest enemy wasn't humanity, it was each other. The communication channel opened to reveal 7 alien commanders in various states of rage, confusion, and growing suspicion. Battle damage was visible on several ships through the background of their transmissions, and the perfect formations that had threatened to exterminate humanity an hour ago now resembled scattered debris fields with occasional intact vessels. Human vessel, High Admiral Zekthara's crystalline features flared through angry color spectrums as she spoke, your deception tactics have caused significant casualties among Allied forces. This trickery will not prevent your ultimate destruction. Deception? Zephyra replied with practiced innocence, settling back into her command chair. I simply made a few observations about your tactical formations. Everything that followed was entirely your own doing. Warseer Vashti's shadow-wreathed form leaned forward from her section of the split screen. You manipulated communication frequencies. You created artificial interference in our command protocols. I transmitted exactly 1 harmonic pulse, Zephyra acknowledged. 4 minutes of communication blackout. Everything else, the friendly fire, the mutual targeting, the complete breakdown of alliance cooperation, that was purely your own military competence at work. The accusation hung in space like an unexploded torpedo. Around the bridge of the Meridian's edge, the crew monitored 7 different fleets that were still engaged in sporadic combat with each other despite the restoration of limited communications. Trust, once broken between ancient civilizations, was proving remarkably difficult to restore. The Nexari Confederacy demands immediate explanation for Veltar aggression, Prime Voice Se Katar announced, his mechanical voice processing with maximum hostile parameters. Quantum torpedo impacts on our vessels were clearly deliberate tactical strikes. Crystalline energy weapons targeted Confederacy formations without provocation, Zekthara responded, her harmonic voice carrying notes of equal indignation. Such actions violate all alliance protocols. Both fleets opened fire because you lost track of a single human ship for 4 minutes, Zephyra interjected calmly. 1 small vessel with obsolete technology, and your ancient alliance collapsed into mutual destruction. That should tell you something important about the strength of your coalition. Fleet Crown Xiphon's plasma-wreathed features flared with thermonuclear intensity. Human psychological manipulation cannot alter the fact that 7 civilizations remain committed to your species' containment. Really? Zephyra asked with genuine curiosity. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like 7 civilizations just discovered they can't trust each other enough to coordinate a simple attack on a single ship. How exactly do you plan to contain humanity's expansion when you can't even maintain formation for an hour? The question struck at the heart of each civilization's deepest fears about coalition warfare. The Veltar hegemony had spent centuries refusing to subordinate their crystal fleets to alien command. The Corvin Assembly's computational matrices were incompatible with organic decision-making processes. The Umbral Syndicate's entire military doctrine was based on betraying allies at the optimal moment. Each species had fundamental incompatibilities that made true alliance impossible. "Captain," Lyra whispered, monitoring the cross-fleet communications, "they're starting to blame each other for the Alliance failure. The Zroth Collective is accusing the Ethereal Dominion of sabotaging targeting systems with their Harmony songs. The Corvin Assembly is demanding security audits of all bioship data connections." Song Admiral Lyraliai's harmonious voice carried notes of frustrated melody as she addressed the conference. The battle songs of the Ethereal Dominion follow cosmic harmonics that transcend crude targeting mathematics. If lesser civilizations cannot coordinate with superior harmonic frameworks, perhaps they lack the spiritual development for true alliance. Spiritual development? Marshal Krex's mechanical voice processed at maximum disdain parameters. Ethereal mysticism interfered with precision targeting solutions. Quantifiable tactical effectiveness was reduced by irrational harmonic variables. The Umbral Syndicate's stealth tactics prevented coordination between allied forces, Swarm Leader Gorth added, his biomechanical hybrid voice clicking with agitation. Shadow strikes on multiple targets created confusion about enemy identification. Survival requires adaptability, Warseer Vashti replied from her shadow-wreathed transmission. Umbral doctrine does not change for the convenience of allies who prove unreliable. Zephyra watched with satisfaction as 7 ancient civilizations tore their alliance apart through simple mutual recrimination. Each species was reverting to their fundamental nature, the Veltar's crystal-born arrogance, the Corvin Assembly's mechanical precision, the Zroth Collective's biological pragmatism, the Ethereal Dominion's harmonic superiority, the Umbral Syndicate's survival-focused treachery, the Nexari Confederacy's quantum-linked unity, and the Plasma Lord's thermonuclear directness. "The truth is," Zephyra announced to the 7 arguing commanders, "your alliance was never about defeating humanity. It was about your fear that working together might actually be possible. Every civilization represented here has spent centuries believing that cooperation with aliens was beneath their dignity or beyond their capability. Today proved you were right." The communication channel fell silent as the weight of her words settled across 7 different command bridges. They had united against humanity not because humans were particularly threatening, but because the idea of successful interspecies cooperation challenged every assumption their civilizations had made about galactic politics. "One human ship," Zephyr continued quietly, "with 12 escort vessels and obsolete technology, just convinced 7 advanced civilizations to destroy each other's fleets. Not through superior firepower or advanced tactics, but by simply pointing out that you don't actually trust each other. And you know what the real tragedy is? You were right not to trust each other." "Captain," Thane reported quietly, "multiple fleets are beginning withdrawal procedures. The Umbral Syndicate has already vanished into stealth mode. The Plasma Lords are conducting emergency cooling cycles. Human Commander, High Admiral Zekthara's crystalline features had shifted to deep, contemplative blues. What outcome do you propose from this educational experience?" Zephyra stood and faced the viewscreen with the authority of someone who had just changed the course of galactic history. "I propose that 7 civilizations return to their territories and remember why they spent centuries avoiding alliances with each other. And I suggest that the next time someone proposes uniting against humanity, you recall how easily one human captain convinced you to fight each other instead." The transmission ended as each fleet began its separate withdrawal from the Kepler system. 7 ancient civilizations departed with their military strength shattered and their diplomatic credibility in ruins, but more importantly, with the knowledge that successful cooperation between species required something none of them possessed: genuine trust. "Captain," Naya said quietly from the helm station, "we did it. They're actually leaving." "Yes," Zephyra replied, watching the alien fleets disappear into hyperspace one by one. "But at what cost?" 3 days after the battle that military historians would later call the Kepler Paradox, Captain Zephyra Kane stood alone in her ready room, staring out at the debris field that marked the grave of galactic diplomacy. The scattered wreckage of alien vessels drifted like metallic snow against the starfield, each fragment representing years of technological advancement and irreplaceable cultural knowledge lost to fear and mistrust. "Captain," Lyra's voice came through the intercom with unusual hesitancy, Admiral Chen is requesting immediate communication from Earth Command. Priority Alpha. Zephyra sighed and settled behind her desk, activating the subspace communicator that would carry her report across the light years to humanity's leaders. Admiral Chen's weathered features appeared on the screen, her expression carrying the weight of someone who understood the broader implications of what had transpired at Kepler. Captain Kane, Chen began without preamble. Preliminary reports suggest you managed to defeat 7 alien fleets without firing a shot. Explain. I didn't defeat them, Admiral, Zephyra replied carefully. I simply reminded them why they've spent centuries being unable to cooperate with each other. The victory belongs to thousands of years of mutual suspicion and incompatible philosophies. The result is the same. 7 civilizations that threatened human expansion have withdrawn with massive casualties and broken alliances. The shipping lanes are open, our colonies are safe, and humanity's position in this sector is secure for the foreseeable future. Zephyra nodded, though she felt no satisfaction in the achievement. Yes, Admiral. The immediate tactical situation has been resolved. You don't sound pleased with preventing a war that could have wiped out human civilization. Because I've also prevented any possibility of genuine interspecies cooperation for the next century, Zephyra said quietly. Those 7 civilizations will remember Kepler as proof that alliance with aliens is impossible. They'll retreat into isolation and mistrust. The galaxy just became a smaller, lonelier place. Admiral Chen's expression softened slightly. Sometimes the choices available to us are all terrible, Captain. Your responsibility was to protect humanity. You succeeded. After the communication ended, Zephyra made her way to the bridge, where her crew was monitoring the ongoing salvage operations. Automated probes were collecting technological samples from the alien debris, each piece representing knowledge that might advance human science by decades. But they were also collecting the remains of beings who had died because ancient prejudices proved stronger than common purpose. Captain, Thane approached with a data pad containing casualty reports, final tally from the engagement. The 7 fleets suffered approximately 30% casualties before withdrawal. Total alien personnel lost is estimated at over 200,000. All because they couldn't trust each other long enough to coordinate an attack on a single human ship, Kai observed from the engineering station, his voice carrying notes of both admiration and horror. No, Zephyra corrected gently. They died because I was very good at my job. And sometimes being good at your job means living with the consequences of necessary victory. Naya looked up from her helm controls with the expression of someone grappling with moral complexity for the first time. Captain, did we do the right thing? I mean, we saved humanity, but we also condemned 7 civilizations to centuries of continued isolation and mutual hostility, Zephyra finished. We proved that cooperation between species is impossible by making it impossible. And somewhere in the galaxy, there are young aliens who will grow up knowing that their greatest enemies aren't distant threats, but the civilizations next door. Lyra's communications board chimed with an incoming transmission, and her face paled as she read the identification codes. Captain, it's a message probe from the Ethereal Dominion. Song Admiral Lyraliai's personal seal. The message that played across the main view screen was brief but carried harmonics that made the translation system struggle with emotional nuance. Lyraliai's ethereal features showed a sadness that transcended species boundaries as she spoke. Human Commander Kane. The Ethereal Dominion acknowledges your tactical mastery and strategic wisdom. You have demonstrated truths about interspecies cooperation that we had hoped were false. The harmony songs of my people will carry memory of this day as a lesson in the futility of alliance between different forms of consciousness. We withdraw not in defeat, but in recognition that the universe is too diverse for true unity. May your species find the isolation it has chosen, and may it prove less lonely than ours. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the Meridian's edge in contemplative silence. Outside the viewports, the debris field caught starlight like scattered dreams of what might have been possible if fear had not proven stronger than hope. Captain, Thane said quietly, "Earth Command has authorized full commendations for the crew. They're calling this humanity's greatest strategic victory." Zephyra nodded, accepting the information without joy. Note in the ship's log that Captain Zephyra Kane and crew of the Meridian's Edge successfully prevented the extinction of humanity through the deliberate destruction of galactic diplomatic cooperation. Mission accomplished. Price paid in full. As the ship prepared to depart the Kepler system, Zephyra remained on the bridge, watching the debris field shrink into the distance. She had saved her species by proving that the galaxy was too filled with mistrust for cooperation to succeed. It was a victory that felt remarkably like defeat, and a tactical triumph that would echo through history as the day when hope for interspecies unity died in the cold vacuum between stars. The Meridian's Edge jumped to hyperspace, carrying its crew home to a humanity that was now safer, more isolated, and more alone than ever before. Behind them, 7 civilizations nursed their wounds and their grudges, convinced that the events at Kepler had proven cooperation between species was not merely difficult, but fundamentally impossible. In the vast silence of space, the debris field continued its eternal dance around Kepler's star, a monument to the day when one human captain's brilliance had saved her species by breaking the galaxy's heart.